Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Sales are up on Delmarva. We'll take a look at why. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. It's not just on the Eastern Shore, but across the country. And on Black Friday last year, background checks shot up and were higher than any other day on record. This week, the Salisbury Times took a look at gun buying increase and what motivates the buyers. In our studio this morning is that reporter, Emily Chappell. She wrote this week's piece, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what, by the way, got you intrigued to the idea that we're having this sort of massive increase or serious increase, maybe, of gun sales?
Yeah, so it's kind of something my boss, Ben Pinsurga, planted in my head. He sent me an article out of Virginia that talked about their gun sales being up recently, and sent it to me and kind of was like, let's take a look at this and see if this is across Delmarva and try to get a big regional piece on it. And then, over 2 months or so, I kind of delved into all of that data and talked to people across the 3 states and found out it is, in fact, up across Delmarva.
So what kind of increases are we talking about? What did you find? And was there any big difference between any of the 3 states that you were looking at?
All in all 3 states are higher than they were in 2014. It's something that, as you said, you're seeing across the country. Specifically, I found that handgun sales are up, and that has a lot to do with people being able to conceal carry those and have them for protection. So that kind of taps into some of the reasons why gun sales are up.
So, and you've talked to a number of folks who are gun sellers. So what are those people like?
It's an interesting group of people, they love their guns. They love to talk about it. I got to talk to some pretty neat gun shop owners in the area. I was actually in one of the gun shops in Berlin. It was Arthur's Shooter Supply. It's off of 50 near Berlin. Mm-hmm. And he's got this really small kind of shed in his backyard, and you walk in and it's just wall-to-wall guns. Any kind that you can think of. And they have strong beliefs about the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, and they really aren't thrilled with some of the legislation that's coming through. That's kind of what I heard a lot of,
Sure.
And a lot of gun buyers aren't thrilled. That's another really big kind of trigger for them why gun sales are up.
So, and the people who go out and buy guns, what was some of their motivations, but particularly that you talked to?
Yeah, so I talked to a couple out of West Ocean City. They were actually in the process of buying their first handgun ever as a couple, and they were kind of a different type of couple. They, the wife had grown up with guns, had shot them. Her family had been hunting a lot, so she was around them a lot more. But the husband, while his dad had owned a sporting shop and he had been around guns, they weren't ever really his thing. So he never felt the desire to own a firearm, until recently. And being more and more around his in-laws and being around guns kind of got him into them. But what he said, a really big push was this recent legislation. Thank you. And that was kind of the kick in the pants that he needed, and they, found a gun that was used in their price range, and that was it. It was time to go and buy one.
So, Maryland, for instance, has fairly stiff gun laws. I was sort of taking a look at that. Virginia, it seems to be a lot more lax. What's the situation with these gun laws? I mean, are people more satisfied, gun owners more satisfied, say, for instance, with the Virginia model as opposed to, obviously, here in Maryland, where you've got a situation where you've got a limit on the magazines, you've got some bans on certain kinds of assault weapons. I mean, there seems to be this dramatic difference.
Yeah, it's interesting. People still seem concerned in Maryland about these gun laws, and I talked to Maryland's Attorney General, actually, Brian Frosh, and he kind of point blank said, we already have strong gun laws. So nothing that comes out from the president is going to change anything. So everybody's fear that gun laws are going to come and, take away their guns and make it really hard to buy them. He said that it was unfounded because Maryland is already pretty strict in what they've got.
So, in terms of the politics and so on, there been a great deal of concern about gun laws with things like we had obviously the death of Antonin Scalia. We have obviously on the Democratic side we got both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. There seems to be some political shift going on that they may also be reacting to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is something that I heard across the board. It's a politically charged time. People really are, they're paying attention to the election and gun laws and gun control. I mean, that's way up there. The couple that I spoke to out of Ocean City actually cited watching a recent debate with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and they talked about gun laws and holding gun salesmen responsible if a weapon that they sold was used in a violent crime. And he said, that kind of thing, it kind of put a bad taste in his mouth and made him a little bit concerned what that could mean about gun laws and them getting a lot stricter. So, I mean, the election right now, it is so big in this gun discussion.
So is this, by the way, the desire you indicated that there's actually a major upswing when it comes to, say, handguns as opposed to, say, shotguns and long barrel guns? Is this just an issue of safety? I mean, is that what's happening here? Even though we know on a national level, by the way, that the crime has actually gone down dramatically. I mean, it's really interesting to see sort of this spike in guns on the one hand, and yet you see this drop in crime on the other.
Yeah, I found that interesting. I know we recently had something else that said Salisbury crime was also pretty much down, but people still, they're not feeling safe, and I would say personally, a lot of the stuff with ISIS and terrorism and the mass shootings that we've had, there's a lot of conversation about if we had guns, could it have stopped that sort of thing? So people apparently are not feeling safe, and something that someone mentioned is kind of being on the Eastern Shore and being in a rural area. Things are further apart, and you may not have law enforcement getting to you as quickly as you would, in a city or a metropolitan area if something were to happen. So with that, people feel like they need to have a weapon to protect themselves until law enforcement gets there.
Now, you also did looked at a comparison between Connecticut and Missouri. What did you find?
Yeah, well, Brian Frush, Maryland's Attorney General, he cited that about how when they repealed a permit to purchase law in Connecticut, or when they put that in Connecticut, rather, they saw violent homicide with guns that go down drastically. And the same thing in, when they repealed it from Missouri, they saw crime go up. So he said, we have seen that these types of gun control laws have brought crime down and brought, violent gun death down. And so it's one of those things that he said, we're safer with these things in place. It makes sense to have them.
I take it, though, that may not convince the average gun buyer, for instance, that you talked with, that there seems to be this concern nonetheless.
Yeah, nonetheless, people, they really seem to feel like they need to, have their firearms, and they feel like people are going to come in and take them, and it's their right. It's in the Constitution. They're pretty intent on keeping them.
So is there a difference, you think, between, say, for instance, how people feel, say, for instance, on the Eastern Shore, you indicated a moment ago, in terms of rural areas, as opposed to, say, they might be, say, in Baltimore, where you have lots of crime and lots of shootings? I mean, there does seem to be sort of a serious difference between, say, the shore on the one hand, at least for Maryland, and, say, something like the rest of the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that people aren't feeling safe down here. I mean, guns are kind of a part of Eastern Shore culture. It's a big hunting area as well. So, I mean, that definitely has to do with, more people wanting firearms. But like I said, people still aren't feeling safe. And, the couple that I talked to out of Ocean City, that was part of the reason they wanted to get a gun, was so that they could protect themselves. And they said, God forbid, we don't want to ever have to use it. But it seems really silly not to have something to protect yourself in case you ever needed to have it. So, I mean, from what I heard, there's a lot of first-time gun buyers. a lot of older couples, women. It's across racial lines. It's not something that's one group or another. It's everybody is going out, and people are thinking, now is the time. I'm not feeling safe. I might not be able to get them in the future, or it might be harder to get them in the future. So, regardless of crime statistics, people feel like they need them.
So do you think part of it is also just simply that the gun culture, at least certainly in this rural area, that's just part of everyday life? I mean, do you think that's part of it? At
Uh,
least underneath, although it wouldn't explain the spike, I suppose.
Yeah, but I would say
Yeah.
underneath it, I mean, it's pretty common here. You drive down the road and you see signs and billboards for gun shows, and so it's something that's pretty standard down here, at least from what I've seen. The couple I spoke with even said, the husband, he had grown up in not as rural of an area, and he said so he just wasn't around guns, and then he came to the Eastern Shore where it was a lot more common to have one, and that kind of got him used to it. So it's definitely something he saw when he came down here. I've only been here about 8 months, and it's
Mhm.
something that I've seen as I've come down here. So I would say it's part of the fabric of Delmarva for sure.
So at this point, I mean, is there some expectation that we've seen a one-time spike, or is it something? Is a feeling that if the election turns a particular way, that we could see a continuing increase in the sale of guns?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least through the election until, we've got a new president, you're going to see a spike. From what one gun shop owner told me, anytime Obama talks, his gun sales go up. So it's not just, there's been a spike, it's they keep seeing, data go up and more people are coming in to buy, and it has a direct correlation with what's going on. So I would say, expect to see them go up. That's what I've been told. Um, I don't know how that's going to change once we get a different president, but until that point, we're kind of in a state of flux here, and people are heading out.
Mm. So what's the situation, by the way, in Delaware? Because we've talked about, say, Virginia and Maryland. I mean, is it the same kind of feel? What's and as I looked at the gun laws, they're a bit looser than, say, certainly than Maryland.
Yeah, I didn't look as heavily at
Hmm.
Delaware, but their sales are up as well. I know between January and December last year and January and December of this past year, there was an increase just in those months. And, December, around that time, was the time that Obama was out and talking about the executive order. So it is the same thing going on there. People feel like they need to get guns. It was the Delaware gun owner or gun shop owner who said to me, every time Obama talks, his sales go up.
Mm. Are they, by the way, any reassured at all about the fact that there is a Republican governor here in Maryland?
I didn't hear a lot
Yeah,
about that, so people aren't saying, well, at least we have, this guy on our side or this guy
yeah.
who shares our beliefs. So no, they're pretty concerned about the kind of big picture politics.
Hmm. So, have they? By the way, did they indicate that this would affect the way they say vote or the way they approach politics?
They didn't
Did they really
particularly
sound?
say
Yeah.
that, but if I could take a guess, I would say it's going to have an effect. They're feeling strong about their guns and not so good about people who might want to change how they can get them. So I would say that that's going to have a big play in the election.
So, tell me, and you also went to, I guess, a Steele's gun shop, I guess, by Charles. So what was he like?
I was not there
Oh, but
personally,
yeah,
but I
but you did
talked with
talk
him
to him
over
by
the
phone.
phone. Yeah, he had a little bit of a different perspective. He wasn't one who said, politics, politics. He said it could have something to do with that, but he really more saw that people felt afraid. He was the one who brought up the fact that being in a rural area, people aren't feeling safe. He really said it might be politics, but I think people just don't feel safe in the world right now. In our country, there's a lot going on, and he thinks that really is why gun sales are up.
Hmm. I mean, is it sort of a social uncertainty, I guess, to.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, yeah. So at this point, we expect then that you expect anyway, or they expect that the gun sales will continue to go up, or at least while through this election, because I'm sure that the gun issue is going to come up over and over again. I'm sure, as a matter of fact, with certainly Hillary Clinton going after the gun loophole when it came to the manufacturer's immunity, that kind of thing. Is there any indication that any of these folks would become politically organized or connect more in some fashion, or they seem more isolated? I mean, it's
Uh,
just
From what I saw, yeah. I mean, no one said, like, I need to go out and do something about this. But I think in their own way, people are out and they're talking about it. I mean, social media right now is so big in the election. People are out and talking about guns and how important they are to people. There are so many pro and anti-gun websites and, Facebook pages and Twitter accounts. And so I don't think people need to be organized per se into groups because you've got social media and you can kind of go out and get your opinions heard and try to make a difference through that.
But by the way, is there any sense about how the National Rifle Association plays in all of this? Are these people members, or any sense about that at all?
I did not hear, about that at all.
Yeah.
No one brought that up.
So at this point, we're looking at gun sales. We're looking at this issue to continue for some time here, at least on the shore. You think?
Yeah, I would say it's something it's going to be at the forefront. It's at the forefront of the election. It's going to be at the forefront of Delmarva, in my opinion. And, like I said, I expect sales to continue to rise. I expect people to really, go out. I mean, the media has been writing about how sales are up and how people are concerned. And I think that could really get a little bit of, I don't want to say panic, but people are reading it and saying, oh, well, if these people don't think they can get a gun, maybe there's a reason for that. So maybe I should go out. So I think it's a lot of people are seeing it and kind of following suit.
And I guess, this is a fairly conservative area. I'm assuming that do they take any solace in the idea that you have a number, whether it's state legislators or certainly Congressman Eddie Harris, strong Second Amendment kind of guy?
I'm sure that's helpful to them, but I know, there was talk out of Virginia when there were, not being allowed to carry guns in government buildings. That was something, I talked with someone out of a gun group in Virginia, and he said, that was something that really pissed off gun owners, So while they have some people who are really strong Second Amendment supporters, there are also some people that are making some changes, kind of in the opposite way, and that has them concerned.
So at this point, they don't really kind of trust then the political leadership to stay away from their guns.
I really don't think they do. That's what people have been saying. People are pissed. People don't feel like they're being listened to. They think that either their guns are going to be taken away or that they're not going to be able to get guns in the future, or it's going to be such a hassle to get guns in the future that nobody's going to want to try to do it. So people just aren't feeling like their interests are being protected.
Any sense that they might try to repeal some of these laws in Maryland, or are they just accept the idea that this is done, this is over with? Particularly, for instance, you have the gun dealer himself. Are they acceptance of the fact that this is the way things are going to be, at least in the state of Maryland?
They're not happy about it, I think that they're hoping with a different president, maybe things are going to be different, but I've heard a lot of, Obama has done this and Obama has done that, and people aren't happy, with kind of how things are going. So I don't know if they've accepted it. I know that a lot of them would like it to change. So, hey, we'll see with this election what it's going to do.
So, it does seem as if on a national level, they're kind of looking at what's going on. Even though, say, in the state of Maryland, as Brian Frosch points out, our gun laws are much stricter. Nothing. There's really virtually nothing that Obama's done or been able to actually get through. We have, for instance, the background checks, which didn't make it out. Certainly not limits when it comes to magazines and that kind of thing. But we have all that in Maryland. It doesn't seem as if, I think as Frosch points out, that anything national is going to impact what we do here. Unless you change the state legislature, right?
Yeah, and that's, he pointed that out, and he really said, your fears are unfounded, guys. It's really, you're going to be fine, But people aren't believing it. I really think people are kind of seeing the worst here, and they're saying, well, if they can do this, then they can do that, and then they can take it further and do that. And I really just think they're afraid it's going to snowball, eventually, and it doesn't matter where things are now. They think it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, we'll see how this works out. We've been talking with Emily Chappell. She is a reporter for the Salisbury Daily Times and wrote a major feature piece on the uptick in gun sales. Appreciate you stopping by and talking with us.
Absolutely, thanks.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, Visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.